Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and I have a geometry lesson to share with you today. We're working through our live education Waldorf curriculum for the main lesson block on geometry, and this one is on sixth division of a circle, but we're going to be working with another resource as well in order to do some geometric tile designs that can be found in a mosque in Turkey. So we're going to be working on sixth division of a circle, but we're going to be using different parts of this sixth division in order to create some really neat geometric designs. It is a little bit challenging to do, and I will walk you through this process. The first thing we're going to do is set our compass radius to 3 centimeters. Now you can do a little bit more or a little bit less, but this will give us enough circles on this page in order to do our design. I'm going to start by drawing a circle on our page, and then we're going to do our sixth division of a circle by placing our compass on the periphery of our circle, on the circumference, and swinging another circle through the center of that original circle. Next, we're going to put our compass onto the arc that bisects our circle, and we're going to swing another circle, again going through the center. And then once again, we're going to set our compass where those two circles cross on that arc. And you want to be as accurate as possible, because in this lesson, if you are a little bit off in the beginning, you're going to have huge errors later on. We're going to set our compass needle again on the arc that bisects that original circle. You can see that we're quickly creating several circles that are dividing our original circle into several divisions, and it's going to perfectly make 6 divisions where you can see that last 2 circles come together. We're going to go ahead and do one more circle. So you can see a really beautiful floral design in the center of the circle. It looks like 6 petals, but now we're going to continue, and this part can get a little bit confusing because as we continue, we're going to create more and more circles with that 6 petal design in the center. So you can already see very quickly another circle, which is right next to the original one, have several of those petal designs in the center, indicating that we have completed 6 divisions of that circle. This next part of the tutorial I have added in after reviewing this video and realizing that it was very challenging to see the step-by-step instructions. So I'm going to be adding this clip in for your benefit, and I'm labeling each of these points so that you can very clearly see how to connect them. But I will go back to the regular tutorial once this is complete. We're going to be connecting our hexagon within our 6th division of a circle. And in order to make our hexagon, we did do 6th division of a circle. And so you can see all of those petals in the center of the circle are actually not necessary with our final design. In fact, not even the hexagon is necessary for our final design. So here's our hexagon. I'm labeling it A, B, C, D, E, and F, with A being at the top. So I'm going to just erase all of those extra lines because it's going to be complicated in seeing what we actually need if all of those extra lines are in there. And you could technically erase the hexagon at this point as well. So once all of this is erased, now we can see our hexagon very clearly. We're going to be connecting A, E, and C to do our first triangle with A being at the top. So I'm connecting A to E, and then I'm going to connect A to C, and now we want to connect C to E. And we've created an equilateral triangle inside of our hexagon, which is inside of our circle. Now it's time to create the next triangle, which is going to nest right on top of this triangle. So it's time to connect F to D. So F is on the left side of A. We're going to connect it all the way to the bottom. And now we want to connect B to D. And finally, B and F in order to create our next triangle, which looks upside down of our first triangle. now I'm going to label each of those intersections with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And this is going to be a lot easier in figuring out which lines you want to connect. And I am circling 1 and 2 and 4 and 5 because that's going to be our first set of parallel lines. We're going to connect 1 and 5 together. And then the next set is 2 and 4. And you can see that it creates a set of parallel lines. Now at this point, we need to connect 3 and 6 because they're not connected to anything yet. And we're going to first do 2 and 6 together. So we're always connecting at least one of those original 4 points, which I've circled. We're going to slide our ruler down, and we see that we hit 5, and 5 and 3 create a line that's parallel to the first line that we've drawn there. So we're going to go ahead and connect that as well. And you want to be light with your pencil because a lot of these lines are going to get erased. Okay, we have one more set of parallel lines. We're going to need to pivot our ruler so that it's going in the other direction. And we're going to be connecting 4 and 6 together. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line there, and I'm going to move my ruler up until I hit another line, another dot. I see 1 and 3. So we're going to connect 1 and 3 together to create another set of parallel lines. So you have a lot of lines here, but you can see there's a star right in the center, just like the star that we created with our double triangles to begin with. So I'm going to erase the numbers and those little circles, and now I'm going to use my ruler and my pencil in order to accentuate those parts of the star from the center of our hexagon. And I'm going to include the tips above the star as well so that it looks like crossing triangles at each of those points of the star. And as I go along, I'm going to erase those extra lines, that original hexagon, and any of the circle arcs that were necessary in order to do the 6th division of a circle. So now, as these lines are getting erased and those star points are being accentuated, you can see the star design in the center with some points coming off from it. So now we're going to do another hexagon on the circle that's below this one. So for this sample, I'm only doing a few. It's a smaller piece of paper, and these circles are larger in order to really show these different designs. So I'm erasing all of those extra lines, but I did mark the center point for our 6th division of a circle so that I can draw our hexagon at this point. Now you don't need to draw a hexagon. You could just connect each of these points in order to do your double triangle. So I'm connecting 1, 3, and 5, or A, C, and E for the first triangle, and now we have our second triangle on top. Once again, I'm marking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, where each of those triangle lines cross, and I'm connecting the first 2 on either side of that top point in order to create my first set of parallel lines. And I am circling each of those points because each one of those points needs to be a part of the second set of parallel lines. And this way you can keep track so that you're not making your lines askew, because we want to make sure that they are parallel. Now, if they're not exactly parallel, this can just be as a result of some fine-tuning when we did our 6th division of a circle, and this is likely to happen. So you can see the star in the center, but you can also see those points of the star above that triangle connect with the points above the other triangle. And you can see it's a little bit off, it's not quite perfect, and that's going to be as a result of the thickness of your pencil or not placing your compass just so when you're making your 6th division of a circle to begin with. Now is the time to accentuate the star in the center of your hexagon and to erase any of the extra lines that are not needed. And so you want to go light when you are penciling it to begin with, and you can go heavy when you're accentuating those designs at the end, and you can use pen as well, and that will really bring out your design. So I'm erasing all of those extra lines, and now that we have 3 stars formed by 3 hexagons, you can see a hexagon form in between those 3 stars with a little diamond shape on 3 of those corners for your original hexagon. So now we have our 3 stars and our hexagon. We're going to do one more on the side here, just so that you can see how this pattern is going to come to life before we do the fun part, which is painting it in or coloring it in with color pencils. And then I'll take you back to the original tutorial where you can see a larger scale project where we did a lot more hexagons, and you can see the pattern really come to life. And then we also color it in slightly differently using a couple of different art mediums. For this one, after I've erased those extra lines, I'm going to paint it in with some watercolors, which I think looks really beautiful, but I'm not going to outline it. That is a choice that you can make, and it can look really beautiful if you use a fine liner, and kind of less so if you use a really thick black pen, as you will see later on in the tutorial. I'm using my Winsor Newton watercolors, and I am using some colors that you will see in this mosque in Turkey, which are the warm browns and 2 types of blue. So I'm using kind of a light blue for the star, and then a turquoise blue for the hexagon pattern that's between each of the stars, and then brown for those little points on each of the stars. And I really like the color combination. I think it's really beautiful. All right, let's go back to the original tutorial. This is what it looks like when the entire page is filled, and now comes the fun and challenging part. We're going to be using our straight edge in order to make a hexagon within that original circle. So we're going to be connecting each of those arcs around the circle in order to produce a hexagon. You can choose any circle to begin with, and you want to be, again, as accurate as possible, because from this hexagon, we're going to be constructing further divisions in order to get some really neat designs that you can then choose which ones to color in, and you can choose the colors to use. And then from that, you get an infinite possibility of designs and colors and segmentations depending on what you choose to color in. So now that we have our hexagon, we are going to be making 2 triangles. Now you could begin by doing your 2 triangles and skip making your hexagon, because eventually we do need to erase the hexagon. So in order to do our triangles, we are going to be connecting every other point of the hexagon in order to produce the first triangle. And you can choose any point to begin with. And then once you skip every other point to connect your triangle, you'll see that you'll have an equilateral triangle. And this point looks like it's pointing almost directly up. And so our next triangle is going to have a point that looks like it's pointing almost directly down. So at this point, we can just connect the remaining lines in order to produce the second overlapping triangle. So this is the part that can get a little bit confusing. We are going to be pointing out the 4 points that we're going to connect from top to bottom. So where the triangles overlap, we're going to be connecting those parallel lines. The book that we are referring to does offer to circle those points, and I think it's very helpful, especially in the beginning, because now we have 1 set of parallel lines, but we want to create a total of 3 pairs of parallel lines. So now we're going to be connecting the top right point with the bottom left point, but not the original one that we drew the parallel lines with. We're using one of those points with the other part of our triangle, which becomes very confusing. This does take a few moments to look at, to review, and to make sure that you're connecting the correct dots, because at this point you can see so many lines within your hexagon, it can be very confusing to keep track of everything. So it took a little bit of time, but at the end, you're going to end up with 3 sets of parallel lines. One, you can imagine going straight up and down. One set going from right to left, from upper right to lower left, and the last set going from upper left to lower right. At this point, I'm double checking that I have created the correct set of parallel lines. It is helpful to erase some of your extra marks, and I found that it was really helpful for me to freehand the tiny little star that's right at the center of this hexagon by just using my pencil to outline all of these lines that I eventually want to keep for the final design. So I'm using my eraser in order to remove the extra lines, but you can really see that star pattern emerge from that original hexagon. So now we're going to do it again and again and again until we have covered the entire page. So at this point, I realized that I don't need to make that original hexagon. I'm just going to do those overlapping triangles because we have created our 6th division of a circle a little bit different than what the book had suggested. And the book is Islamic Geometric Patterns, and it's by Eric Broug. And in this lesson, they have you constructing a hexagon a little bit differently. And so by doing 6th division of a circle, we are adding a lot of extra lines and arcs within our pattern that need to be erased anyway. And so I decided not to include another hexagon since we already have our 6 points, so we can just do our overlapping triangles. So there's the triangle, and then the 4 points that you want to line up, you can imagine them being to the right and left of the top point of your first triangle. And so the first set of parallel lines are pretty easy to draw in. It's connecting those parallel lines with the other 2 points of the triangles that have intersected one another but are not part of the original parallel lines. And that's where erasing as you go might be helpful so that you are very clear on what you need to keep and what you need to connect. And by erasing, I mean erasing the original arcs that form that floral pattern at the very center of your circle. So now that we have our parallel lines, and you want to make sure that they're parallel, and this is where accuracy really comes in, because if you notice that they are not parallel, then your final design also isn't going to be perfectly symmetrical. I decided to add in the circle points on each of those parallel lines where it intersects with the triangle in order to keep track with producing my next 2 sets of parallel lines, because you're connecting one of those dots to one of the intersecting lines of your triangle that you did not mark with a circle. And then again, a parallel line. So I would just take my ruler and just move it across my design to make sure that I was connecting the next 2 sets correctly, because you do want to end up with these lines being parallel. And if they're not, again, then your final design isn't going to be perfectly symmetrical, which means that as you connect them to the next circle and the next circle, then you're going to have some variation. So this accuracy at the beginning of your project is really important. And then there is going to be my second set of parallel lines. And by moving my ruler down, then I can see more clearly which 2 points I'm connecting. So it's quite a mess. There's so many lines. And at this point, I'm using an eraser to erase any of those extra lines and points and arcs, and also using my pencil to sort of exaggerate the star formation in the center, because then it's more clear to me what I want to erase and what I want to sort of bring to the foreground. And from this, very quickly, you can see that really beautiful interlocking hexagon and star design. It's so beautiful just as a pencil drawing, and I would leave it as a pencil drawing, but I decided I wanted to outline it with a fine liner because I thought this would sort of hide some of the imperfections in this design, because there are some imperfections, but by outlining it with a thick fine liner, I feel like it exaggerated all of the imperfections, and I really didn't like the final result of outlining it. But here's the fun part. We get to color it in, and I'm using some color pencils in brown and 2 shades of blue in order to mimic the colors of this particular mosque in Turkey. But I really don't like this design that I included in the hexagon at all. So I decided to use my watercolors instead, and I love the way the watercolors looked so much better, and I like the way the watercolors look without it being outlined, and I love it even more if I left white spaces in between the star design. So here's a look at this design with multiple patterns of color and variations on art mediums in order to produce this design. And in the end, I really preferred the watercolors with more white spaces in between, and this allows those designs to really come forth because you have more white space in the middle, and also any imperfections that you might have had aren't as apparent when you have a little bit of white space in between those star designs. So I hope that you enjoyed this slow tutorial on producing this gorgeous tile work through geometry using just your compass, your straight edge, and a pencil, and of course watercolors. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video. You can find that link down in the description box below. And if you'd like to see how we're homeschooling on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram and now on TikTok at Pepper and Pine.